Okay, we're gonna move on to, okay. Hello, everybody. We're coming back into session here. If you want to speak, there's some forms up here that you need to fill out. And then I'm going to open up the public comment section now, which is limited to 3 minutes per person. If you're interested in speaking, yeah, fill out that form. And I'm going to start with David Olson.
I just mainly had a question of when and how did the community development director position become essential?
David, we don't really take questions and comments now, but you're welcome to follow up with Carly after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Charlotte.
Good evening. I'm Charlotte Mates, and I've been a resident of Moab City for 28 years. And tonight I'd like to speak about the open communications with the people and the residents of Walnut Lane. I have a friend who came up with a list of things that she felt needed to be addressed. One was the time frame. When does the project begin? When is the completion? What is happening with the displacement of the residents? Are they planning to clear out all residents at once? The residents are substantially worried about their families, where they're going to live, their jobs, and their personal property. When the project is finalized, what are the qualifications required to meet the apartment eligibility? Most often rent is 1/3 of your income. Are they going to do background checks, credit checks? And what will they do about standard low income residents who are people who actually keep our workforce going in most of our motels, restaurants, and so forth? Let's see, I do think that we owe it to the people, as any one of us who were in a similar situation would want to know what is happening. And I have done a little bit of research. I haven't done a great deal of research, but I have not come to the conclusion that the people will be told the urgency at which I feel that people are now talking about moving back to the reservation. And I feel that it's up to the people of Moab to come forward and help these people. I personally, as an American, feel that the city of Moab made a huge mistake. I don't know all the details about why you bought the property in the first place. And I know that to displace the families who are low income will be a very big disservice to our community. And we need to be foresight in looking at forward. So I'd like you to help educate the community, the media, the residents, and look at what is happening to these residents' lives and for the months to come. Suggestions I would make is to have immediate, open, understandable communication considering language and cultural differences with the Walnut Lane residents and people. Redo a survey that I understand happened 5 years ago. Brainstorm solutions from the whole community. My dream would be to write off the purchase that the city made as a loss and provide avenues to work with each household case by case to meet the needs for affordable, livable housing. My understanding from talking to some of the people down there, they don't believe there is any developer who will purchase the property and take on the project to displace cultural residents who compromise our workforce. Please take all of these comments into consideration. It's said with the greatest amount of respect for your positions, but I really sincerely believe that you should write that off as a loss, give the property to the Native Americans and the Hispanics, and work with them individually, each and every one of them who have now taken on the households of the people that lived in the other trailer parks. And now they have 6, 8, and 10 residents in every trailer. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Charlotte. Anybody else? Public comments?
Can I step on
Sure.
comment just on 1082?
Okay, Ty?
All right, guys, Ty Shumway, just wanted to give this Rednecks 2 bits on the pre-annexation for 1082 South and how awesome it would be if it was in the city. That's all the comments I had.
Thanks, Ty. More to come. Anybody else?
Well, mine's just in regard to the White Canyon Dam, so I don't know if that's one yet.
No, go ahead and make your comments now. Mitch
So,
White.
so I know it's coming up, but it's been an issue. It's White Canyon Dam, the retainage dam at the top of Senate. It's been an issue for quite some time. And it's been ongoing, but my issue is that my family, like Jerry White and myself, own the ground at the top. So we have not been actually contacted for this, which we should be the first people to be contacted for it, really, because Jerry owns the dam and my house is right below it. So I know that there's money allocated for this, I think from the state and the city, correct? Like
We'll be talking
400,000?
about it in a minute.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up. And that's what I was gonna, that's why I was wondering if I should wait.
No, this is the time to
Okay.
make your comment.
Okay, good. Yeah, so then that's what I want to address is actually notifying the people first, because we can, we can fix this problem easily. Just by a purchase, pretty much of just an easement and possibly buying Jerry's ground, which would be a solution.
Great. Thanks, Mitch.
You bet.
Anybody else? Public comments? All right. We'll move on. We do have a department head update tonight. We didn't know about this until yesterday. And so Alexi is going to talk to us about she needs your direction on decorative street lights and replacing or retrofitting them.
All right. What I wanted to talk about tonight was that I did have some options for replacing or making the decorative streetlights that are mostly found on Main Street that look like this, dark sky compliant. They currently are not because the light hangs below the bell that would be covering it, which makes them not dark sky compliant. And we need to find an option that fits up entirely under the bell. We did look at LED lights. However, we couldn't find something short enough that would fit up inside of that. So that moved us to looking at retrofits and replacements. And we do have retrofit options, which there was an image here, but basically it's a unit that fits up inside of the bell and it would be flat, very similar to the fixture on the right in this image. Now, the actual fixture on the right is what would be a replacement if we wanted to replace the fixtures on Main Street. Essentially, the difference is between like 56,000 and 521,000 to replace everything on Main Street. That only would be the actual units. It wouldn't include, let's say, redoing concrete if the bolt patterns don't match or something like that. The fixture that we picked for the comparison is the same one that was spec'd in the dispersed parking plan. So it would then match all of the ones that would be going in subsequently. However, it is substantially more expensive. This would likely be the option that would happen as a replacement currently if, for example, a light fixture on Main Street were hit by a vehicle or something and damaged beyond repair due to the fact that the ones that we have on Main Street currently are no longer manufactured. So at this point, we are replacing things on them as it's possible, and things that are damaged by getting hit by a car and not repairable would be replacements. However, right now, the real concern is just whether or not we can make them dark sky compliant. Our discussion previously was that we have a certain amount of budget for doing dark sky updates in the city. And we could potentially put it towards replacing or retrofitting fixtures and knock it out in the current fiscal year. That would be possible. Or we could use that budget to replace a certain number of fixtures and then do it every year for the next 10 years. What I would like is some guidance on whether you want to retrofit or replace fixtures, whether you would like to pilot or spend budget upfront on a larger number, and also the preferred color in terms of like. So we can start with one, retrofit versus replace. Yes.
Ronnie.
Looking at the cost, it kind of seems like a no-brainer, but I guess what would be helpful to know, I mean, to go with retrofitting, but what, if anything, should I be aware are the drawbacks of a retrofit? Is there a shorter lifespan? Is there, I don't know.
These, as far as drawbacks, I think the major drawback is that we can't replace our current fixtures. So if something happened to one of them, they would need to be replaced anyway. As far as the life of the luminaires that we would replace it with, they have replaced them in other Southwest towns that also hit like higher temperatures like we do. And I believe in 10 years, and I think it was Santa Fe, had no replacements, like there were no failures. So I'm not concerned about the reliability. However, it is a concern that the like actual poles and arms and things like that can no longer be replaced.
Anybody else?
Given the price difference and time frame, I lean towards retrofit. And I would be curious, like, to pilot with different. So if there's some fixtures that are located far enough apart from others that like we could pilot different color temperatures so that like if we chose a different one, but they weren't so close to others that you really notice the incongruity.
Yes, I did talk to the person who's been working with us on trying to find a replace or a retrofit option. He said that it would be fine if we wanted to mix and match with a pilot. They offer 2,000, which would be a color rendering index of 65, or 2,700, which would be a color rendering index of 70. And they offer in between as well. We could go 2,000, 2,400, 2,700, or up to 3,000. So we could mix and match whichever of those we want to see.
Are these on Main Street? Is that what you said?
They're mainly on Main Street. The only other ones that I'm aware of on our inventory are in the courtyard here at City Center, like between here and the gym, and then all the rest of them are on Main Street.
So does UDOT have any say in what streetlights have to be on Main Street?
Well, these are already owned by the city, and so that agreement with them, I think, would stay in place. Now, the streetlights, other than the decorative ones, we are working with Rocky Mountain Power separately on.
Okay, no, I was just wondering if since it's on the highway, if it's,
Yeah.
they have some sort of code that things have to meet a certain.
I don't think we would modify the current lighting pattern and try to match the same lumens. So I don't think it would modify anything substantially there. I have contact with them and I can verify that.
So retrofit, is there luminaires level that you'd like to see in the pilot?
The color temperatures?
Yep.
I'd like to see the range up to 2,700. I
Okay.
think.
Yeah,
Up
me
to,
too.
okay, so 27 max, and then we'll
Yep.
do the two that are under that as well. Okay.
Next,
I think you've gotten it. We're retrofitting, we're piloting, and we are going to pick a variety of color temperatures up to 2,700. That was all of my questions. Any other concerns?
all right, thanks.
Excellent,
Alexi.
thank you.
Thanks, Lexi. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5. It's our consent agenda. 5.1, consideration of an adoption of resolution 2123, a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the city of Moab and Grant County School District authorizing Moab police officers to serve as school resource officers in district schools. This has been in the works for a while, and we finally came to a conclusion with the contract. Then 5.2, consideration of approval and authorization of the mayor to sign the cash commitment letter for high hazard detention basin project scoping. This basically is just committing $100,000 in our 24-25 budget for the scoping work, which is a 25% match from the federal government, which will provide 200,000. We're gonna, well, I think that's what the number is. Maybe it's 400,000. 400 total. We're gonna put in 100,000. And then this is the scoping leads up to the actual construction and the project itself, which won't happen until 24-25. So the reason this is on your consent is because you'll be approving a budget with this amount in it at that time. Right now, we just have to provide the federal government with a letter stating that we are committing the money, our match to get the project moving forward. Yes.
And so would scoping include also considerations about easement, easement acquisition or property acquisition? And like, I'm just wondering, like, given the neighbors' concerns, at what point would those be addressed?
What will the
Sorry, I
scoping-
was visual. Were you
What-
watching, did you watch Citizens to be Heard?
Yeah, I
Public
listened
comment?
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, does scoping also look at like easement or property acquisitions as a part of like the other technical considerations about? how to address-
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the best mechanism we've found by going after this FEMA money to address the concerns that we have with this high hazard dam and then the moderate hazard dam. These are regulatory dams through the state of Utah. So we have to go through process. And these scoping would include geotechnical investigations, any necessary hydrology and hydraulics, alternatives analysis to the ways to treat the spillway and the public access, as well as easements, to answer directly to your question.
And does the scoping process have opportunities for public input and specifically like more?
Yes, we have public engagement included in it. And I've met with the Whites several times since I've been here, so I'm aware of their concerns, but there's a process and we're trying to address those concerns, but we have to address them because they're regulatory dams with a lot at stake. You see in the high hazard inundation maps that I included with the packets. So we have to, go through this methodically and in concert with the regulations.
And so this is basically just committing the money to support the.
Right.
The grant application, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The method. I'm still methodical process.
Yes, it is. And we don't have the grant yet. We're applying for the grant and they want to have a commitment that we'll do our local cost share, which is why the letter of commitment we're asking for now. We have to go competitively participate. But they don't want to, award to us and then we don't have the money. So that's why they wanted the letter of commitment.
Okay, great. Ronnie?
So just to be clear, even if it ended up having, the easement, definitely helped with the access issue on the one, we still have the unreinforced dam and the release of water onto private residences with the other two. And so what you're saying is, we have no other option than to go through with the scoping process by, I guess, law or code or whatever stipulations, in order to, repair that stuff.
Yeah, if we had all the money that it would take, and literally it's going to be at least $1 million, and my guess is it'll be a couple of $1 million, then we wouldn't suggest going for the FEMA funds. But, when we look at budgets, we haven't been able to find a way to pay for these structures that we have up there that have been there and need attention.
Okay.
So this is our opportunity to try and, 25, to us, it's 25 cents on the dollar and pick up 75 cents from the federal government. So it's perhaps an opportunity if council wants to fund these improvements that are needed.
Right.
And then it might have been in here, but do we know where the $100,000 would come from? Or is there a,
Probably stormwater would be the most appropriate fund or rainy day.
and then I guess last question is, our list is so long for capital improvements and other issues. I just can't remember. Has this been on a list or was this recently called to our attention just in terms of needing to be added?
I-
I'm trying to remember.
No, it's been on our list since 6 years and it's
Yeah.
not on the 5-year CIP, if that's your question.
Okay, because
It's not directly on there because we never had the the
Opportunity
money,
or
the
money.
opportunity like this before. These FMA grants have really taken a new push in the last 2 years from the federal government for opportunities for local communities. So we're trying to take advantage of that.
I guess one other related question would be, how many, if any, other detention basins, is the city responsible for that, might have issues like this? Are there other ones aside from White and?
Well, no,
sorry.
we have, not that come to
Awesome.
mind immediately. We have another one that's up off of Tusher and Arches Drive.
Yeah.
And that was built by the NRCS. And it satisfies design standards at the time. And so we're able to maintain that. And those are not rated high hazard dams. Our dams are inspected every 2 years by the state of Utah. We look at them after major storm events and then every 6 months if there are no storm events, just to erosion and rodents are the biggest issues with detention basins. They're essentially dams with controlled outlets in them.
Okay,
So we inspect that, but no, these are the two highest priority of we've got about 8 detention basins.
okay, yeah, I know those residents up in the Arches area have been kind of in communication over time, just about concerns, but okay, that's helpful to know it's not rated.
Yep.
Okay, I think that was my questions on that. Mayor, I didn't know if we had to request to have some of these things taken out of the consent agenda because some of them involve a financial commitment. Now granted, we're talking about rules of
This one does
procedure.
not, because we're just doing a letter of commitment, so there's not really a financial
Mhm.
commitment yet. That'll come when we do the budget next year. And I don't think there's anything else in here other than the approval of the bills,
Is the school resource officer not considered some kind of commitment because?
not financially. Well, it is because the police department, one of their officers, but it's nothing new. They've been doing it for a while. Yeah.
It's about them.
Okay, can we ask some questions about the SRO? Or does it need to be taken out if we want to ask questions?
But sure, go ahead.
So it's a little unclear in different parts of the pages on this in the packet, if we were talking about just one officer or potentially more. So I saw single reference to officer more often than I saw plural, but I just wanted to be clear. Are we talking about just one?
It's my understanding it's just
Uh-huh.
one at this time. Yeah.
Joking.
So yeah, when I got here, I committed that we would be very involved in school safety. So we've been using existing resources to add the school resource officer. The county currently has a part-time officer that's loosely, we'll call it part-time. But really what this agreement does is the school district, before I arrived, they had a verbal agreement between Moab PD, the sheriff's office and the school district that each entity would contribute 33% school safety. And when I got here again, we added that resource. So what really we're asking for what this allows us to do is fund overtime events that any officer can go to, because we do need to be at football games, basketball games, dances, things like that, where we typically have some challenges. And so really it's just a mechanism for us to bill the district for 33% of what an officer costs.
Okay, and I appreciated all the detail in here about, training and who's responsible for what training, the police department versus the school district, and, what might happen if the officer is sick or not available. Between the part-time, county officer and the other officers we already had, is there some kind of cross-training that occurs so that maybe whoever has to step in if the regular SRO is absent, that they kind of understand the details specific to the school or the SRO? I don't know that they're, yeah.
Not really. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that's serious in nature, we would, if the current SRO aircraft was unavailable, we would send a detective to handle that
okay.
issue. And really, it's more of just having an officer present at the school to deter anything that would cause harm to students or staff. So no, there's many statutes out there that apply to school safety, and we're working hard to make sure our officers understand those statutes. Actually, Assistant Chief Bell is working on legislative updates to the department currently. But to answer your question, no, it's really Eric he is very mobile. He visits all three schools. We even have officers present at the charter school, even though that's not.
Okay, yeah, I know. I got a question about that from someone. So, okay, yeah, I know they aren't part of the agreement, but okay. Okay, no, thanks. I was just gonna recommend that anybody who's interested in this, read the agreement, because I actually thought there was a lot of interesting information in it that was educational.
We're grateful that the school district is actually contributing. It
Right.
helps us again with those overtime events we would be responding to anyways.
All right. So moving on. So we've gone over 5.1 consent, 5.2. We have the approval of the minutes from August 8th, regular meeting. Approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $766,726.38. And we have a suicide prevention awareness month proclamation that was mistakenly left out of the packet. I did give you a copy of that. I'm not going to read that tonight because it's sensitive to somebody here on the council. And I'm going to ask for a motion to approve consent agenda items 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda, approving items 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5.
Very good, Keelan. Second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Tawny. Any further discussion, Keelan?
No.
Tawny?
No.
Anybody else? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to our general business, item 6. The first item is consideration of the adoption of resolution 2023. A resolution of Moab City Council adopting the rules of order and procedures for city council meetings. This is tabled from our last meeting in August. I believe that everybody's had an opportunity to get their questions answered. I appreciate all of your comments and input. I think it made for a much stronger document, so I really appreciate you guys taking the time to look at it and get into the details. Lisa has made the corrections, some which were presented at our last meeting, some which were recommended at our last meeting. Those are in the document in the red line version, and I also have the clean copy. And I'll just go ahead and ask for a motion to approve resolution 2023.
I'll make motion. I move to approve the resolution number 20-2023, a resolution of Moab City Council adopting the rules of order and procedures for Moab City Council, for city council meetings.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Luke. Any discussion, Jason?
No.
Luke? Anybody else? Ronnie?
I had a question that occurred to me today. So there are various comments in here about when we need to have a roll call, for example, and some of them are things that we haven't traditionally done. So those of us who've been doing this a while can bone up on what's changing. But I think one situation that was not addressed, which I just thought I would ask, how do you address this? It does say if there's a single nay vote, you have to have a roll call vote. What about an abstention?
Lisa? Can't hear you, Lisa.
you.
You're muted, but we can't hear you. Can't hear you. You're on mute. You're on mute now. We can kind of hear you.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting out, Lisa.
Abstention is very odd. It doesn't happen very often, so no, it's not covered. If you abstain, you haven't voted, so it's not a no vote.
Right. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say for my part, thank you to folks who put this together and for dealing with our questions. I know it now says not just that it may, but that this will be posted in the chambers and people need to understand it. Honestly, for my part, I still find parts of it confusing, but I can understand I'm going to be gone soon and I'm not going to have to be the one who has to understand it. So I was just going to say, kind of in the context of the country we're living in now, I think this could be either used really well or it could potentially be a bit problematic. There are portions, for example, that talk about cutting off a council member who maybe has a longer council report. And I understand, to have an efficient meeting, you have to have time limits. But part of the reality we live with as council members is some of us have more appointments to committees than others. So invariably, and it's happened throughout the course of me being here since 2016, sometimes someone won't have anything to report. And some people, there were times I can remember Karen went to 12 meetings. So I would just hope that there would be continued sensitivity that, because we've also had residents tell us sometimes in the reports, it was the most educational part of the meeting for them because they didn't realize, that was part of what council members did. Or a lot of times we're trading information about things we live in the community. I would also just hope that there is, I think it's been since 2016 that we had any kind of training as council members on any kind of cross-cultural sensitivity. And because there are things in here that reference, what might be considered offensive, I would kind of hope that the council moving forward would have another training about that, because there are different things that are offensive in different cultures or different members of our community, not just culturally, but, sometimes it has to do with religion or other things, or yeah. And I think that was probably it.
Great. Any other discussion? Luke, Caitlin? All right, just so you know, this can be amended. It is quite detailed. It's based on Lisa and my work that we did to come up with how to run an effective meeting. If we find that things are problematic, we can always amend it later. It is your document. I plan to go over it with new council members when whoever they are when they're elected. So I think it is a good document, and I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
All right, motion passes 4-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, now we move on to consideration of approval of the 1082 South Highway 191 Shumway pre-annexation agreement. We're going to start with Michael. He's going to give a presentation on the annexation process, just to get you guys kind of back. We're going to have several of these coming down the pike, and I thought it was important with some of the questions from the last annexation that we give you kind of a preview of what the annexation process is about, how it works, public comment, all those kind of things. And I'm just going to let Michael go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you. As she said, I'm Michael Black. I'm the Community Development Director. And I'm going to give you a presentation, and I'm going to guess that this will be the shortest presentation I ever give you. So it's only 3 slides. And it might have been a joke on me because I haven't worked in the state in 14 years, and they asked me to give an update on how the annexation process works in Utah. I went back and did a lot of research and talked to the planning staff, and I think I've come up with a short presentation that will explain how the annexation process works, but also talk about what pre-annexation agreements are, and hopefully answer some questions that you might have on that. So we'll get started. Sorry. Okay. So the annexation process is dictated by the state code. The municipalities in Utah receive their powers from the state as subdivisions of the state. And the annexation process is a legislative decision, which means the city council is the only body that could make the actual determination on an annexation. Annexation should be guided by the annexation element of the general plan, which we have. And that says specifically that the city should adopt policies for annexation that provide a realistic planned approach to development that will help to reduce sprawl. Now, if you look over to the right, that is our annexation plan. There is more information than that in the general plan, but generally speaking, that's the annexation plan. That yellow boundary around the city shows the area that has been disclosed to any interested party, including the county and the state, of the areas that we intend to annex at a certain time. Some of those areas do have future land use. If you look along the highway down towards the south, between there's little peninsula, if you will, north of the USU campus, Some of those areas that you see hatched, those are areas that have future land use plans. But generally speaking, most of the area in acreage is not designated as to what zone it would be when it comes into the city, generally just right along the highway there. So the other thing I wanted to point out is that the city council, according to the state code, has broad discretion on the disposition of annexation requests, which means that the city council can create criteria that you can follow to accept or deny annexations as you choose. So I want to go through the process for pre-annexation, and then we'll talk about the annexation and how we go from a petition to city council review and approval or denial. So first of all, a pre-annexation agreement, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight, notifies the city of the developer's decision to pursue development within our city as opposed to the county. So that's a good thing. So we are being informed of what the plans are for future development within the county now, but we're being informed that the developer intends to annex into the city, so that would be part of the city's jurisdiction going forward. Pre-annexation agreement does not guarantee a final annexation approval. The pre-annexation agreement is a guide. It gives you the idea and enables the city council to understand the intentions of the developer, but it is, and generally speaking, we're entering these in good faith, but it is not an annexation. It is not granting entitlements. And I think that's a very important distinction when we're talking about annexations and any land use applications. We are not talking about entitlements when we're talking about approving an agreement. Just to be clear on that.
Michael, do you mind if I just add some color to like what they kind of contain in their scope? So a pre-annexation agreement is not like approving a site plan. No project has gone through development review. It's these broad, high level understandings of what a project could entail. So it's something, and sorry if we're going to cover this, but there's sort of these broad brushstrokes because we don't necessarily guarantee a certain amount of units, for example, in a pre-annexation agreement, because we don't know after site development what could actually be feasible, right? So there are these broad brushstrokes of what we want to make sure we get. They can be amended throughout the process. So you approving them today doesn't mean that you're locked in forever toward, it would be permanent and sort of very difficult to renegotiate once annexed. But up until the annexation, they can be amended, and we have a lot of leverage to amend them because at the end of the day, we just might not approve an annexation. So a developer would be motivated to amend if it were determinative of the annexation ultimately. So they're excellent and really flexible instruments to kind of get what we want from developers and property owners. And we have a lot of leverage and a lot of like discretion about how we want to approach them.
Thank you. So I'll move on. If you have any questions about pre-annexation, I think either Carly or myself could answer, or our legal team on the Zoom call. So moving forward, as far as the annexation process goes, the city council, you've probably seen this before in a flow chart, but if somebody once somebody wants to actually move that annexation forward and actually get a decision on the annexation and come into the city, they submit what's called a petition to the city recorder. The city recorder presents that to the city council. If the city council accepts it, at that point, the city council can say, we reject this, or we're going to accept it. If the city council accepts it, then the city recorder starts the certification process, starts the notification process. And once the certification process is completed and the city council has noticed that the application is complete, then there's a protest period, there's public involvement through planning commission review, which when it goes to planning commission, they start looking at the proposal compared to the general plan, the annexation policy plan, and make recommendations to the city council on the zoning for the parcel. And again, according to or compared to the general plan and what is most consistent for the city's future growth. Now, the city council review would be towards at the end of the project. The city council would hold a public hearing. It's not we can have public involvement all through this process, but the only public hearing that's required by state statute is the city council public hearing. Again, that doesn't mean that the public isn't involved throughout the rest of the process, but it's a statutory requirement that a public hearing be held at a certain point, and that's been determined that be with the city council. The city council reviews all the information, and ultimately the city council approves or denies the annexation request. And again, the city council has broad discretion over approving or denying or just over the disposition of an annexation request. So one of the things I was asked to look at when we were talking about pre-annexation agreements was kind of what would be the considerations that we are looking at? And these are all considerations that already exist. These aren't anything new. In fact, most of these are pulled from the general plan, from some of the objectives within the general plan. So the first one, obviously, does the annexation request or the pre-annexation agreement, the property that we're looking at, doesn't comply with municipal code? Is this something that the developer is asking us, is giving us an insight of what their plans are for the property? Does that seem consistent with the municipal code? That's the first thing that we'd look at. Next, do the zoning requests or any other conditions that the applicant has comply with the general plan? Would the development be considered an orderly expansion if it were brought into the city? Does the annexation safeguard the city's interests? And does it pay for itself? And that one may be confusing. What that means is basically, if we annex a property in and it needs a road that goes to it, are we sure that that's not going to be a burden of the city and then cause that burden to be on the city fiscally? So that's what it means by paying for itself. And then the big one, I think, is asking the question, is it logical and appropriate for this parcel to undergo its planned development, which we know what the development's going to be because that's been exposed to us. But is it appropriate for that to be within the city rather than in the county? Because in most cases, the development is most likely going to go forward. If we're talking about properties along 191, the question is whether it's going to go forward in the city under the city guidelines or in the county under the county guidelines. And that's one of the considerations that I think should be taken into account as we're looking into this. And then, are municipal services already available? If they're not, can we get them there? And finally, would we move towards accomplishing any of the specific strategies or goals of our strategic plan? And as you know, there's the housing, city capabilities, sustainability, infrastructure, and community investment. And looking at all of those, it doesn't have to meet all of them, but does it move anything forward? Does it move any of our strategies forward to bring this property into the city or to enter into a pre-annexation agreement on the property? And that's pretty much it for my presentation. We have a presentation on the actual application tonight as well, but I think we can answer questions too if you have any.
Questions?
Does a pre-annexation agreement have to be entered into prior to the first step in the annexation process?
I don't believe so. I believe the pre-annexation agreement could be entered into in between the filing of a petition and the public hearing and the decision on the annexation. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, with the pre-annexation agreement, we're kind of giving some certainty about the project before initiating the formal process, which has like these deadlines behind it, and we're kind of we're required to follow certain protocols. So it gives us like a head start on the negotiation.
So since do you have any more questions? Okay, since the pre-annexation agreement doesn't grant any sort of entitlements or anything, so we might state like, we're okay with shifting this to like this type of zoning or whatever, but through the process, it can change. So like with input from the public or planning commission or city council, we can make a suggested change to the zone, at which point it's up to the applicant to determine if they want to continue forward with like that option or not. Is there like, what are the legally binding portions of the pre-annexation agreement? Because it sounds like this is kind of, we're having open dialogue about these things, but at any point, like things can potentially like shift around. So let's say somebody wants to build commercial space or something like that. We end up zoning it C4. And then there's a turn in the market where there's like another surge for housing or whatever. So we have rezoned it and everything with our understanding that this is potentially going to be like a commercial space or something like that. Since that was part of the pre-annexation agreement, is there any sort of obligation for the applicant to move forward with like the commercial stuff, or are they potentially free to change their mind?
They would be free to change their mind, but what we do, especially like in this particular pre-annexation agreement, we have a scenario where if the commercial space isn't built and they go to housing instead, we would require all of that to be restricted. So it tries to prepare for that contingency.
Okay.
But they aren't given anything now. What they are given is basically the initiation of a process, and it locks in once they're annexed. So there's no vesting, there's no entitlement by you entering into this agreement. What this agreement does, it's not really for the applicant, it's for us. It's for the city's benefit to say, we're not even interested in annexation unless we know we're going to get the following kind of items. So it protects us more than entitles the applicant.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I would just add that on both sides, we're expecting that we're talking and negotiating in good faith.
Mhm.
And that the developer has every intention of following through unless something changes, and we can renegotiate that. And we have the intention of at least recommending that this be the way it is unless it is renegotiated.
Mhm.
And so I think that's important to know that we are operating in good faith and that they do mean something, but it's not an entitlement.
I guess kind of if we want to be generous or something, like, let's say there is some sort of like crazy turn in the market or whatever, where that 100% like ADH requirement or something now makes that project completely like not pencil out. Like, is the applicant locked into it since no, so we can rescind that?
We could, it's a restrictive covenant that we hold. And so it would be the discretion of the city council. You're not binding councils forever in perpetuity to be locked into it.
Okay.
But it would be something you'd have to be willing to negotiate.
Yeah.
It's a restrictive covenant, right? We said in this one. I believe it is. I can't remember if it's a restriction. Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions about the process before we move on to the actual pre-annexation agreement discussion?
No, that was really helpful. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
You bet. I'll leave it to planning department.
All right, so this is a application for a Shumway pre-annexation agreement. And this is just the vicinity map. We're showing that across the street, 191 is already in the Moab City jurisdiction and the C4 zone. And then across the street, that's all in the Grand County. Adjacent to the back is a residential zoning district and residential uses in Grand County. And then to the sides are also a commercial zone in Grand County as well. What they want to do is annex this particular property into the city with the C4 general commercial zone. As part of this annexation process, we are looking into doing an agreement. So far, the agreement has been drafted that the zoning designation would be C4 commercial zone. That the designated uses are going to be flexible. Right now, they're proposing office, retail, and then a cafe type of use. But as we were talking about earlier, if the markets change, then they could potentially change it to any use that is allowed by right in the C4 zone. And there is also going to be an additional requirement that if they do change it to a residential use, that it would be subject to the active employment unit chapter. And then that's an active employment household, excuse me. And then any building that is built needs to have, meet LEED requirements. Part of the review for the pre-annexation agreement was looking into the general plan and also into our ordinance requirements, or it's going to be on the future land use map as commercial use, and that it's in the annexation area of the city or of county and city. And it meets both of those requirements. It also meets some of the general plans, goals and objectives and visions and those type of things as well. So this is a preliminary, this is basically what they've submitted to show what they are proposing to use the project as. And again, it's going to be the retail, cafe and office type of uses. We've also did a little matrix showing what is allowed in the highway commercial and what's allowed in our C4 zone. There's a few really small, like a small amount of differences in uses. It's not really super significant. And then I guess, so our next step would be to motion if we want to approve this and to answer any questions.
Questions for Anna or Corey? Okay,
I can ask
Ronnie?
you.
sure.
Maybe you could just help me because I went through all the pages, right? And like, and I know, one can do anything in the C4. So in some cases, in some respects, plans at this point for what might happen are moot. But I was curious because there was a drawing that showed potential, I think 25. Oh yeah, it's just an inconsistency in setbacks. So I just wanted to check on what the setbacks in the C4 were, because I think on the, let me see which page this is. Sorry, I'll scroll because maybe if I can tell you exactly what page it is, it helps you. I think for some of us who aren't developers, sometimes dealing with the numbers gets confusing. Okay. So I understand, like, probably, if it was me and I was trying to choose between the city and the county, one of the big differences between us in the commercial is that like I can build 5 feet higher in the city, right? So that's a bonus. Is there anything else like that that stands out as a major difference? Is probably the major.
The height is, I think, is one of the
Yeah.
major differences specific to this project, as well as they're looking to advance a 3-story project, which gives that more contemporary building height of construction for the plate heights and roof structure. But also, like you've noticed, there are some minor differences in setbacks under the underlining code. Within the C4, there are additionally use parameter requirements for either separations, buffering, those type of elements. But generally speaking, they're fairly consistent, but they're enough of an incentive where that 5 feet makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I figure it's all premature since you aren't approving a site plan, but in case it helps, is there a reason, just so I understand, that when I look at the comparison between highway commercial and C4, and I look at the setbacks for C4 being, 30 feet in the front, 15 on the side and 20 in the rear. Then when I look at the drawings show 25, 0 and 0. Is that just maybe because it's an early drawing, you guys haven't looked it over?
It's definitely because it's an early drawing
Yeah.
and we haven't looked it over for that. We are
Yeah.
mainly just wanting to know about the pre-annexation agreement. If you guys are okay with the terms of that agreement at this point, and then we would go into further detail on site plans and what meets the zoning ordinance and that type of thing.
Okay. And these are just some random questions I've been getting from people in the last few days just to help me. Maybe it helps with the next item too. Is that when one talks about buffering, is a parking lot considered a buffer?
No,
Okay,
No.
in short,
okay,
we'll talk a lot about buffering shortly.
okay. And then, sorry, let me just zoom to this page so I can tell you what part I'm talking about. Sorry, I deal with the full packet and I know you guys deal with parts. So on page 160 of the full package, which is, let me see what I'm in here. think it's part of the staff report, and it's sorry, no page numbers, but under, I'm gonna guess it's like page 4 or so of that, because it's under general plan maps. Let's see.
I think, yeah,
Oh, yeah, under action steps, it just mentions an analysis of zoning alternatives, and I just didn't know. I know usually with a pre-annexation agreement, the applicant, requests a specific zone. Is this the right or the wrong time for me to ask, like, if I wanted to build this project, could I build it, say, in the C5, or does the C5 go that high? I mean, I know there are other questions involved, but I know you guys have the heights and everything else
Right.
memorized better than me.
procedurally, what
Yeah.
we'll be doing is during the annexation petition.
Yeah.
Through that period of where staff is actually doing the
Yeah,
substantial review, as opposed to what the pre-annexation is more about conditions of the, I guess, overall, not recitals, but I guess conditions of the development, if they were to be annexed, what those additional conditions would be, not the underlying zoning parameters. In that context, though, oftentimes when we're initially contacted by applicants, they're maybe going to either suggest or ask about what some of the most optimal zoning might be, and we could suggest based on the proposed development they're looking for, but also what would make sense within that annexation district, what would be contiguous, what would be aligned with the general plan. We might make suggestions in that frame. And as Anna had provided in the vicinity map, what the most adjacent and contiguous zoning is also aligning between why we show the comparison matrices between what is the existing zoning and what our current zoning would be, is if it is already existing and appropriate within that place.
okay. So just to play devil's advocate, when you think about, oh, okay, what's the advantage of me approving this pre-annexation agreement versus not? What the city gets if we sign it is surety that if housing was built here, that if it was more than 3 units, it would be 100% AEH, right? And then otherwise, it's pretty much the same as if we didn't have an agreement, right? Because, pretty much you can do anything in the C4.
Outside of
Yeah.
also the lead, there's also the requirement for it to be lead certified. So that means that there's gonna be more sustainability efforts like such as bikes, and then, as far as we were talking about with the, more efficient water, faucets and other things, that everything would have to be energy efficient, water efficient, and all that type of thing with it as well.
Okay.
So
As far as the housing too, that use parameter within our existing zone district does not include the C4. So the C4, if they were to annex without any other prior conditions, would not have to comply with any AEH provision. So this is one of those opportunities where
Right.
we're actually crossing established zones. And I believe it extends any residential. So it's not just 3 or more units. It's any
It does say in there
Does it?
somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, over 3 units, yeah. Okay, great. And one other question, and it might be for a future thing, but just, this is the first time we're seeing, these lead sustainability list. So I can't remember if there was a reference somewhere in there, but as a council member or for future council members, can or could we expect that some of those requirements, might eventually be part of our larger code? I mean, is that an option for council to say, oh, these look good? Could we ask the planning commission to look at this list or something?
Sure.
I
Yeah,
think
let's
it's,
look at that.
yeah, as far as form-based code
Okay,
potential, yes.
thanks. That answers my question.
And
Yeah.
as far as like developing a more robust like annexation policy about what we're willing to consider, we could more formalize even for annexations very easily sustainability standards such as leaking.
All right.
It's worth looking at. Luke.
So I'm seeing that potentially another one of the benefits of entering into these pre-annexation agreements is like it gives us opportunities to test out certain requirements or certain kind of goals on a smaller scale before we apply them to like larger scale zoning or anything like that. So actually see how these things work once they're actually implemented in reality, and see if they need any minor tweaks or changes, or if any loopholes open up or anything like that that we close before we kind of spread it out more broadly. So.
Kayla.
So going back to the sustainability requirements, in the restrictive covenant, in the recitals, it talks about this. And then it says, specifically says that, as attached here to a set forth in Exhibit D, which shall provide, and then it lists the site features. But it doesn't list building energy efficiency. So, and building energy efficiency is discussed in a general way as like a few different possibilities, ways to approach it in Exhibit D. But it was unclear to me if that is specifically part of the intent of either this agreement or the developer, or if the lack of mentioning of that element in the recitals is significant.
I would default to Lisa in that case.
Is it in the exhibit? Is it outlined, is it mentioned in the exhibit?
Right, but it discusses it more generally because it's not like the first part for the landscape elements, it discusses the lead
Yeah.
standards more explicitly, but then for building energy efficiency, it discusses like, here's how some other communities in Utah are approaching it, and like one agency is using like the Energy Star metric. And other communities are looking at others, so it's a little looser.
An example of a previous pre-annexation agreement for the Staybridge Hotel, a number of conditions and development standards were brought in through that pre-annexation agreement that were structured similar to that of unbounded, maximize on-site energy efficiencies, period. Through that though, what it did give the opportunity, at least in that agreement, and that's my understanding, I believe with Nathan, most concurrently, is the land use authority becomes the governing body of whether that term has been sufficiently met. So it would be wise to, I think, flesh it out as much as possible. But of course, this not included, are going to be a number of contingencies within developing what would be essentially a number of development standards and use parameters to a limited context that you're going to find that where there are holes, where that land use authority will become that governing body of whether that's sufficiently addressed in the proposed plan, as it's an agreement standard set aside from what our underlying zoning will require. So I think as you're observing, maybe have an opportunity, we could discuss that more, but I don't think it's totally inept as it is.
So that might be an amendment to the agreement that's
could be
negotiated during the annexation process.
Certainly.
It could be. Sorry, I just thought, but it's escaped me. Can't remember. Keep going.
What else, Caitlin?
That's it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to consider the approval of 1082 South Highway 191 Shumway pre-annexation agreement.
I'll move that the Moab City Council approve the pre-annexation agreement for the 1082 South Highway 191 Shumway pre-annexation.
Motion by Luke, second.
A second.
Second by Tawny. Any discussion, Luke?
No, just excited at the prospect of being able to add some more commercial space to our community. I know it's desperately needed, so.
Tawny? Anybody else? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. More to come. We're not done yet. We're just getting started. Okay, next up, item 6.3, consideration of the contract award to the county-wide builders for a water reclamation facility utility vehicle garage project in the amount of $430,435. And Chuck is going to make a brief presentation. Do you guys have any questions for Chuck on this?
It's a garage.
It's a garage. But it will also
Protects our trucks.
Right. Chuck, do you have anything quickly you want to?
Quickly, I was gonna say, because I was asked in the questions. This is budgeted item. It's about 5,000 square foot facility. It'll be a prefabricated building. And what it does is one of our most valuable tools year round is our vacuum trucks and vacuum trailers. And they have water plumbing on them. They use water. And what happens if we don't keep them covered in the winter, they freeze up. And then when we need them, they're broke. And So what we are literally doing now is every night they go into the Public Works shop in their area where they work on vehicles. And in the morning, they pull it out, you know, during the cold season. And so now what this would do is give us a place to put the vacuum truck trailer as well as that we have, as well as the vacuum truck and any other vehicles during the winter primarily. The bid came in under right about budget, which was a nice thing. And we think that we could get started in October if council awards now. And so this will help Public Works be more efficient, as well as it will help. There is no garage at the WRF right now. So this will provide a upgrade to that facility.
And how long for it to be completed, you think?
Oh, probably 3 months, honestly,
Okay.
just to get it all, because we have to put the foundation in and pour the floor and then bring the building, so.
Motion.
I will move to award the WRF utility vehicle garage project construction contract to countywide builders in the amount of $430,435 and authorize the mayor to sign the notice of intent of award.
Motion by Tawny, second.
Second.
Second by Kaylin. Any discussion, Tawny?
Nope.
Kaylin?
No.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Can you just
Passes 5-0.
clarify to me? So can you just clarify to me on when we need a roll call vote? So the fact that we're assigning an amount of money, that doesn't require a roll call under the new procedures?
Well, you know what? I don't know that answer. Lisa, do we need a roll call vote? I don't think we've ever done it before, but maybe the new rules say that we do. I don't think it does. I haven't seen anything. Lisa? I can't hear you.
To vote individually.
So we do need a roll call for financial commitments, even though this is already in the budget? It's already in the budget.
It's an award. You're making
and it's a contract.
My recommendation is to do roll call votes anytime the city encumbers its funds. As in a situation, this is a separate agenda item.
Huh. All right, well, that's new. I'll have to look into the rules of order and see if that's the case, but just to cover our bases, Jason, how do you vote?
Yes, aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 like it did before. Thank you. Moving on to item 6.4, consideration of adoption of ordinance 2023-12, an ordinance amending the text of Moab Municipal Code clarifying the screening and buffering requirements for the multi-household dwelling permitted use, amending multi-household dwelling use parameters buffering in section 7.20, 17.20, 17.21, 17.27, 17.30, 17.48, and 17.51. This came about because there was a ruling, I can't remember exactly what the ruling was for, but it found that our ordinance needed to be fixed and it needed more clarification. And so what this does is clarify the code that it's currently written to get it up to the standards that we want it to. It was reviewed by the planning commission, approved by the planning commission, recommended for approval. And it's only going to last until you approve the landscape ordinance, hopefully at the next meeting.
Bridging an important gap that we have there.
So any questions for Corey on that?
I'll just, thank you for providing thank you for providing the determination. That was very helpful for me to understand the context and how it ended up being worded the way it was. Right.
All right, motion?
I
You don't
move
need
to,
repeat at all if you don't want to.
what?
You don't have to read the whole thing if you don't.
Okay, I move to approve ordinance 2023-12.
There you go. That's good enough for me. All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion by Keelan, second by Tawny. Any discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. There we
Thank
go.
you.
All right, now we move on to city manager updates.
Good evening, everyone. Short list of updates for tonight. I wanted to let you know that we'll be sending out invites for and Emma Boulevard ribbon cutting this Friday at 9:30. You are welcome to attend and see our new lovely parking lot. We'll be in what we're calling Upper Emma parking lot. Just sounds really nice. But just a good
Parking lot,
for a,
right?
for a parking lot. Kind of the first project that's completed with that hotspot, the hotspot funds and that hotspot project. I've gotten some questions from some residents about the bathrooms at Swanee Park, which have been not usable for the past few weeks. They should be all finished and repaired by the end of the week. It's been quite a project for my public works crew. I wanted to just acknowledge and talk about the pretty great response to the flash flood last week. I have to say, like, Cora was definitely on it. The communication was really clear. We were mobilizing very early. I got a call from Cora, from Jared, from the whole team, and we kind of were able to rally quickly. I know it wasn't a huge event, but it was definitely a good run through in case we have something coming up. Just a lot of confidence in the organization that we have now, and I want to thank the parks crew, the streets crew, and the PD for just sort of scrambling, closing down the parkway. I had some very enthusiastic, especially patrollers, who just were really excited to get engaged and to make sure everyone was safe and clear of the parkway. And finally, we'll have more details on this a little later as we have some firm recommendations for how to move forward. But we're going to be changing the service of our transit system to its winter hours starting in October. So October 16th will mark the end of the typical summer season. And most prominently, we'll be stopping the fixed routes. And then I think we're coming up with some recommendations about what to do with the on-call transit, the 2 transit vans, about when to make them available. But the hours will be shortened by about 4 hours. So right now they go 7 days a week, 9 to 9, and we're going to see some adjustments to that. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Carly. Kayla, I'm going to start with you so that if you need to leave after your presentation, you're welcome to do.
Well, thanks. That'll be quick because all I have is a solid waste special service district, regular meeting, and just sort of business as usual. We did acquire or receive a couple of new compactor trucks in the last few months, and turns out that they were not as well commissioned by the dealers as they should have been. So they've had to, after attempting to perform various adjustments, they had to go back for more serious adjusting. So, but they will be back on the road soon. That's what I've got.
All right.
And
thanks.
I have to drive to Grand Junction this evening, so I'm going to.
You are excused.
Thank you.
Good luck. Travel safe. Give me a call when you get back.
Okay. I'm reachable this week,
Okay.
these weeks, so
All right. Safe travels.
thank you.
All right, Luke.
Yeah, don't have too much either. Just had a meeting with the mayor last week, and then yesterday we had the special planning commission session so that the buffering and screening amendments could be moved forward to us today, but not much else. Our local homeless council meeting got canceled earlier in the month.
Thanks, Luke. Tom, Ronnie.
Let's see, spent most of my time between meetings, sending questions about the landscaping ordinance to Alexi and re-reviewing the rules of procedure, for Lisa. And then we had a legislative policy committee meeting at the Utah League of Cities and Towns, August 14th. And just in case anyone is interested, there are some new staffers at the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Jared Tingy is the new legal director. It's a new position. Cassidy Hansen is the new marketing and communications manager, and Gary Wetcott is now an official board member. No, not board member, sorry. The language they used is he's now fully on board, so I read that wrong. But anyway, he as a senior advisor. They went over 2 resolutions that will probably be brought before the full membership at the meeting this fall, having to do with dignity and civility in local politics, as well as preemption. there was some discussion about maybe 50% of people in the room seeing a lot of changes having to do with modular home development, not only kind of in their communities in Utah, but also some changes in Colorado and Florida. So we'll probably be hearing more about that. Apparently, part of this has to do with building them offsite and then bringing them in. So I guess Idaho has a new facility to build them. And for example, they're shipping a lot once they're constructed over to California. What was probably most interesting about the meeting is they talked about, those of us who've been involved in this for a while know, and those of you who are about to come on board or about to find out, the ridiculous, I think we can say that, number of bills that come out of the Utah legislature in the short 45-day session every year. Like it goes up every year. And so they were pointing out to us, because I've been going through the interim session and that the main session for the year will happen between January and March of 24. But last year, in October, let's see, they had some 607 bills that were already being drafted. And as of August 14th of this year, so almost 2 months earlier, there are 770 bill requests, 536 from the House, 234 from the Senate. And so they were just reminding membership, you know, this is a good time to talk to your legislatures about what you're thinking and what they're thinking, and to please let the League of Cities and Towns know if you're drafting a bill yourself for your community. And just as an outgoing council member, I guess it makes me think it's always a challenge to track everything that's going on with the bills, and Utah League of Cities and Towns does a great job for us. We've at times had volunteers in the community that are doing some tracking too. And then we have the last few years had a legislative committee where people, you know, try to follow what's going on. But at the rate this is just exploding, I guess I was just thinking my advice to council who are staying on and newly elected council would be maybe figure out a way for everybody to share the weight of that, so it's spread out over more people. But I also think it's great if everyone who's on the council learns kind of about legislative process. That was it.
Thanks, Ronnie. Jason.
Attended a couple meetings. Usually I don't bring up chamber luncheons, but last week I did attend chamber luncheon, and it was just the fact that Cora presented at it and discussed the upcoming solar eclipse that will be in October, which I thought was it was a really well attended meeting, and she had a lot of great information about kind of what we can expect as an area that will experience between 80 and 90%, you know, eclipse, you know, if you will. So
A lot of visitors.
a lot of visitors, yeah, and just, you know, getting prepared and telling people to fuel up before, go to the grocery store before there's going to be a lot of people, you know, coming. It's a big deal and stuff. So. Yesterday I attended an airport board meeting. Not a huge amount of stuff that was at that. The kind of the main thing that I thought that's coming up on September 14th is the dedication of the Bill Groff operations hangar. And from 4 to 6 there'll be a kind of an open house up there, which would be really good and great. And that's kind of the main thing there. Today I attended a responsible recreation meeting. And which is kind of a committee of, I don't know if it's from like, it's kind of a subcommittee like maybe the travel council or county, and they're discussing creating a video series kind of with all the activities that you can do in Moab and how to be safe, how to prepare yourself. And one of the things I threw out was just kind of responsible, what we like to see is responsible stewardship of driving to and from trails, no matter what kind of vehicle you're in, you know, through neighborhoods and towns and stuff. So trying to incorporate that into videos that should be coming out next year and stuff, but they're in the starting process of trying to figure out what they want to see in creating those. So that was it for me.
Thanks, Jason. Tawny.
I attended a museum meeting, and we kind of had a recap of the summer's events, and the museum staff is really doing some really good programming. They really need to be commended. They have truly brought our little museum into the 21st century. Um, there's, there are upcoming events that have been well publicized. The Navajo rug exhibit is still in the museum and I need to go see it. I just saw pictures of it, but the colors and the way that they have staged it is just, it's just breathtaking. It's really beautiful. There will be some more weaving exhibits coming up with weavers that they've, guest weavers that will be on site. And we had our meeting at our storage facility out in the Moab Business Park and got to look at our climate controlled vault, which was really fascinating. Now they have all of the collections that aren't in the museum in the vault. And they are still in the process of quarantining some that have been in dusty, horrid storage conditions for years. They've found things that didn't even realize we had. So
Yellow cake. I know that they used to have yellow cake.
I don't think there was any yellow cake per se, but there was some other interesting mining equipment that they didn't realize they had. They found catgut sutures. Somebody had donated a little package of catgut and silk sutures from long ago that you don't ever want to have catgut or silk sutures. So yeah, and they they really are going to push to do a membership drive. It's $40 to join the museum as a member. And when they do exhibits that they charge for, they have guest speakers that they charge for, your museum membership well pays for itself with the discounts that you get. So yeah, go see the museum. They're doing a really good job. And I got very busy working and I have no excuse. I completely spaced TASU meeting last week. And I think I had a meeting with the mayor and I think that's it.
Thanks, Tawny. I just have a couple of things, really that's upcoming. Representative John Curtis is going to be here on Tuesday, August 29th. He'll be a meeting with us at 10 o'clock here at City Hall. Thursday, I have an Association of Governments meeting. And I'm also going to be meeting with Jacques Hadler, the commission chair for the county, to discuss our upcoming joint city council, city county collaboration meeting, setting the agenda, and also discussing a joint op-ed for the Tribune, just talking about how wonderful Moab is. There's been a couple of negative Tribune op-eds lately, and we thought it'd be important for us to counter those with some positives about how great Moab is. So that's all I have.
I
Yeah.
mentioned one more quick thing, only because I forgot it, and I wanted to thank the police department. They had the clap in at HMK, and they had events at the other schools on August 16th. And I just want to thank the police department because they and the sheriff's department and other nonprofits from around town were just great about clapping for the kids. And it was, I thought, a really inspiring turnout. Yeah, with good energy. And I must say, the most fabulous hairdos and outfits I have seen in a long time, and some kids with some killer dance moves.
Yeah, at HMK. Yeah, last year it was a lot of fun. I forgot, also have to mention part of the school district. The city is going to support the Moab Community Day of Service for first responders. There's a dinner at Swanee Park from 5 to 7:30. And then on Saturday, there's a volunteer day. This is in honor of our first responders for 9/11. And so the city will participate in that, and hopefully, I'm not going to be available that day, but hopefully Tawny and Jason, if you guys are available, you could participate or at least go and welcome everybody. So that's
I'll be
it.
cooking pork sandwiches, I think, that day for the event.
Oh, good. All right, so you'll be there. Wonderful. All right, now I am
I
going
have to go to Grand Junction now.
ask for a motion.
I should be back. But if I get stuck, I might have to be my backup.
Yeah, they want the city to do a declaration of some sort, so.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn, and according to the new rules of order, we need a majority to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
To adjourn.
I'll second.
Second by Luke, all in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.